I was maybe 16 years old, and I was kind of a rebellious kid. I joined Tinder to meet some older guys, and I was matched with this really attractive 20-year-old that seemed really into me. Naive, I know. Anyway, he asked to pick me up from school the following day to get ice cream and walk around a nearby lake. I said yes. He picked me up and we had a great conversation. Nothing weird, and it seemed like we really enjoyed each other's company. When we got to the lake, no one was there because it was the middle of October and very cold on the water. We walked about halfway around the lake, and that's when it got weird. He started talking to me about crime documentaries and how he studied them and knew how to kill someone without getting caught. He started making tracks in the mud and said that he would wear shoes that were too big so the police couldn't match him on the shoe size. He picked up his shoes to show me 10.5 and informed me that he wore an 8. I got uneasy. He started strolling around me while I was sitting on a bench like I was prey. He went to one of those doggy baggy dispensers. He grabbed one of the bags and started swatting me in my face. I thought he might be trying to gross me out, so I half giggled and swatted it away. On one of my swats, he grabbed me by the forearm and pulled me in and put the bag over my head. Still, I thought he might be kidding, but as I tried to get away, I noticed he wasn't letting up. I was starting to panic now, realizing I wasn't getting any air, and he picked me up in sort of a headlock position. I was kicking and trying to elbow, and I guess one of the elbows connected to his groin, and we both fell to the ground. He laughed and said, "You got more fight in you than I thought you did. Was just trying to make you pass out, but I didn't even get that far. I'm proud of you." All of my stuff, phone, taser, was in his car on the other side of the lake, so I decided to play along and pretend that it was funny. I told him I needed my inhaler now and to walk me back. He did, surprisingly. I got to his car and I grabbed my taser and my phone while he walked around the back of his car to the driver's side. I texted my mom SOS and to track my location. When I looked up from my phone, I noticed the guy had pulled out his pocket knife. He slowly laid it into the tip of my chest, just enough for it to pierce my skin. He just blankly stared at me, and this went on for about 30 full seconds. I don't know why, but I said, "You're not gonna do it." This seemed to snap him out of it, and he paused, and then let out a hysterical laugh. Between laughs, he got out, "That's the second time I've tried to kill you today." The whole drive home, he proceeded to tell me how he would have raped and mutilated my body if I accidentally died that day. I got home and bolted out of the car. As soon as I did, he sped off. I got a dick pic later that night, and then he blocked me. I looked him up, and it turns out he was actually 27 years old and had a criminal record for domestic violence. That's all I could get on him though. I reported it to the police, but nothing really came of it though. Probably because I wasn't willing to tell my parents what happened. Either way, worst encounter of my life.
"911, what's your emergency?" "There's a woman in my house." Can you describe what she looks like?" "She's been trying to murder me ever since I did the same thing to her." "Huh? Are you sure you're not on any drugs of any sort?" "Let me explain." "Okay, sir. A few months ago, my wife cheated on me with another man, and I was so heartbroken that I couldn't feel happiness anymore. So I murdered her, taking all of my rage from her cheating on me out on her. After I buried her and I looked down on the coffin and saw what I did to her, I felt so guilty that I just broke down into tears. She used to be the love of my life. How did it come to this?" "Okay, sir, take a deep breath. The first time she tried to kill me was a week after I murdered her. It was raining hard and I looked down at my shaking hands and there was blood on them. When I blinked, the blood was gone. I was just so guilty that my guilt was making me hallucinate her blood on my hands. At about 3 a.m., there was a noise from across the hall. So I walked down the hallway and there she was, holding a knife in her hands. She screeched all of her agony out and ran towards me with the knife. She tackled me to the ground and pain shot through my body. But when I opened my eyes, she was gone." What is your address?" "And now she's trying to kill me a second time." "What is your address?" 136 Benjamin Road, Oakland, California. and she's walking around my house trying to find me. This time, I was having dinner when suddenly she was sitting across from me. She launched herself across the table trying to kill me, but I disabled her for a short time and ran into my closet. And now I'm hiding from her. What's going on? She's locked my door. You need to stay quiet. It's too late. She knows where I am now. Sir! Sir! The police found his body in his closet with a gun in his hand. His death was ruled a suicide by gunshot. The note simply said, "I'm sorry."
The other night I was bored looking at my phone like usual. After a few hours I got hungry, so I left my phone on my bed as I ventured into the kitchen to find something to eat. I guess I was gone from my room for about 5 minutes as I grabbed some chips and made a cup of coffee. I returned to my room, turning on my laptop to watch Netflix and abandoning my phone for a few minutes. About 10 minutes into my TV show binge, I looked down to see I got a notification from Instagram. It was just someone liking my picture. I was just about to turn away and go back to the show I was watching when I saw another notification under the new one. I have an iOS 11 iPhone, so I have the screen recording feature. My screen had a notification saying screen recording saved to photos. The notification was from 15 minutes ago, which was about around the same time I had returned to my room from the kitchen. I was perplexed as I didn't remember recording anything. I assumed it must have been an accident on my part, but went to look at the screen recording just to make sure. I went into my photos and the newest thing was a video that was 4 minutes long. I pressed play and watched as I saw the taskbar pull down to reveal my lock screen. My phone passcode was entered and Safari opened. In the search bar was typed a website I'd never heard of before. It brought up a site that looked pretty old, as the design was really simple. It appeared to be some kind of chat forum, but the odd part was it was in a language I couldn't recognize. It was probably foreign, I guess. The recording showed the site being scrolled through for a few minutes. If this whole ordeal wasn't off-putting enough, it got much weirder as I saw the contents of this website. It started off seemingly normal enough with only text, but then images started showing up. The first few were dark and hard to make out, but I could make out what appeared to be figures and small specks of light here and there. I continued scrolling through, but the images became more eerie. There were a few images of people through windows, some people walking in parks, and what looked to be people getting out of cars at nighttime. Then came the videos. They were very short, each one only about 10 seconds long, but enough to freak the average person out. The contents of the videos themselves weren't creepy, but the place from where it was being filmed. It was just people doing normal things, reading on their beds, watching TV on their couch, cooking dinner. However, these things were being filmed from what was obviously a hiding spot. You could see the door and wall framing the sides of the video as the filmer watched from a small crack in a closet door. The filming was shaky and you could hear the breathing of the person behind the camera. It was odd. The breathing almost sounded sinister, if that's even possible. I clicked on my screen and saw that the video only had about 45 seconds left. I watched as the screen scrolled up and pressed a button that, when I typed into Google Translate, I found out said submit. My camera roll came up and I watched as it scrolled through about 15 pictures of me that I didn't even know were taken and on my phone. How could I have missed that? Granted, I hadn't been on my photos for a few days, but how could these photos even been taken without me noticing? I live alone, so it can get pretty quiet. And being the paranoid person I am, I'm always pretty observant of my surroundings, jumping at every small noise and looking behind my back constantly. One photo was clicked on, a photo of me folding towels, taken from the old storage closet in my living room. The photo was uploaded with a caption that I also translated saying, "Another day closer." After the photo was uploaded, the screen went back to my normal homepage and the screen recording was turned off. A mix of absolute terror and confusion. I opened a new tab on my computer and typed in the URL of that website. I scrolled through several newer posts and eventually found that picture of me. It had several comments, some saying things about my body and others saying things about what the person who posted it should do to me when the day comes. No longer wanting to see this thread, I refreshed the page to see if there was any new activity and saw one new post, timestamped 3 seconds ago. It was a photo of me on my computer looking at the website while sitting on my bed taken from my closet. I grabbed the pocket knife I kept in my underwear drawer and booked it out of my house and down the street at the speed of light, aware that someone was sitting in my damn closet. I'm just glad that they made no move to attack me in those few seconds. I reported this ordeal to the police and they checked my house, but they said they found nothing. They also tried to track down the IP address of the post that was made from my bedroom closet, but said they couldn't trace it. I'm currently writing this from my parents' house and plan on staying with them for a while. I don't know when whoever is doing this was planning their day of attack on, but I'm playing it on the safe side for this one. Realizing that whoever did this must touch my phone as they made the screen recording, I turned it into the police to check for fingerprints. I highly doubt it'll help, but I have to try. I checked back on the site a few minutes ago to see if their posts were still there, and oddly enough, they were. I figured whoever made these posts would be scared enough to delete them to cover their tracks, but they weren't. That wasn't the bad part, though. Going through the new posts, I found a photo. I recognized my front yard and realized this picture had been taken through my blinds. I saw the police talking to me next to their car. Upon translating the caption, it said, "Oh, so close. But I'm the cat, not the mouse."
Before I start, I feel like I should let something be very clear. I absolutely love Ellen. We've been living together for about 3 years now, but have known each other our whole lives. In fact, we were childhood friends. And I know this may sound like a fairy tale to some people, but it truly felt like we were always destined to be together. Even after graduation, when we started dating other people, it only felt truly right when we were with each other. So I don't know what took me so long to ask her out, but I'm really glad I did. We have the same taste in music, movies, and even food. We laugh at the same dumb jokes and know exactly how to comfort each other in times of need. She's the kindest, most gentle, and loving girl I ever met. We even been talking about our plans for marriage and how we would like to have kids of our own. That's why it hurts so much how it all went terribly wrong in just 4 nights. I would also like to preface that Ellen doesn't have much of a family other than me, and some very distant aunts that she never met and doesn't even know their names. I was born in a big family with 4 siblings and plenty of cousins that were always visiting and even helping out when we got in trouble. Ellen has none of that. She doesn't have any siblings, and her father was an alcoholic, abusive freak that died when she was young. Her mother was a very kind and inspiring person that took care of the family by herself for many years and almost a second mother to myself. So when she passed away last year, it hurt us both for a long time. But Ellen stayed strong. She's not the type to let her feelings easily surface, so you gotta be a lot more perceptive to get what she truly feels. I used to pride myself in being capable of that. I felt like I knew her better than I knew myself. That's why this is all so strange and, frankly, terrifying. We were sleeping in bed and I was dreaming. I don't really remember what it was about, but for some reason I'm sure of it until I heard her voice very close to my ear. Knock, 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 knock. She was caressing my hair gently while sitting in bed and looking below at me. I slowly opened my eyes, groggy from sleep. "Hey, what is it, baby?" She kept looking at me, fixated, and repeated, "Knock, knock, knock, knock." I glanced at the digital clock on top of the dresser. 3:27 a.m. I had work in only a few hours. "What is it, Ellen?" She paused. "Please answer the joke, dear." "Knock, knock, knock, knock." "Fine," I accepted, mostly because I was expecting some kind of surprise. Ellen wasn't the type to do what she was doing for no reason. "Who's there?" Her smile opened up and she answered, "Not me, so don't answer the door." I kept looking at her, dumbfounded. What was that supposed to mean? "Is that it? Is that the joke?" "Yes," she said, laying on the couch and covering herself with a blanket. "Thank you for answering." "Weirdo," I answered, closing my eyes and going back to sleep. Next morning, things went as usual. I only remembered the strange conversation while I was alone in the bathroom brushing my teeth, and wasn't sure if it had truly happened or if it was just a weird dream. So we had our breakfast together and she was acting normal, reading something aloud from a fashion magazine. Frankly, I wasn't paying much attention, so I took the opportunity to ask about last night. Initially, she didn't seem to know what I was talking about, then her eyes fixated on me and the same smile from last night crossed her face, briefly, and I knew it wasn't just a dream. She told me it wasn't anything of importance and stopped paying attention when I asked more inquisitively, and even though I shouldn't, I gave up. I had work and other matters to attend to and just brushed off the weird event thinking it wouldn't happen again. But the following night, I woke up to her voice. Knock, knock. A pause. Knock. What is it now? I said. Ellen, what are you doing? Knock, 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 she repeated. This time, she wasn't even touching me, just sitting in bed, looking at me with that same smile. But her eyes seemed larger, and she blinked in longer intervals. I looked at the clock, once again, 3:27 a.m. Ellen, come on, what is it? I got work in a few hours. Can't have the luxury of waking up in the middle of the night to answer knock-knock jokes. Knock, knock, knock. This is getting creepy, you know. I'm not sure if this is some gag you've been doing, but I don't like it. Answer it. Knock, knock, knock. I sighed, but also let a small laugh escape. It was creepy, of course, but she was also my Ellen, so it didn't bother me as much as it should. Fine. Who is there? I answered in a playful tone. Not me. So don't answer the door. For some reason, I felt a chill down my spine. It was the same answer as before, and I still didn't get what it meant. But the way she said it, with a strange, monotone voice, contrasted well with her smile and the fact that I had no idea what she meant by that. What does that mean? I asked. I really don't get it. She just smiled and went back to sleep. I felt a throb in my heart, but did the same. Next day, we talked again about what was happening. She was very evasive with my questions, and I barely got her to say anything. It was almost as if she couldn't talk about it, which was very strange, considering we talk about pretty much everything. I told her I needed to be well rested for work, something she should understand well, and wasn't liking her little gag every night. She just nodded, and I decided to not press further, as I didn't want to hurt her feelings and had work to attend to. When I got back home, we had dinner, watched a movie, and went to bed. Knock. Knock. I opened my eyes faster this time around. In fact, I barely got any sleep. I just knew she would do it again and kept thinking about it the whole time. Glanced at the clock. 3:27 a.m. Knock. Knock. I thought about ignoring her, just pretending I was asleep and she wouldn't wake me up, so I closed my eyes slowly, hoping that she hadn't seen me opening them in the first place and stayed quiet. Knock. Knock, she continued. She didn't stop. I regulated my breathing, but she kept going. Knock. Knock. I'm not answering your joke, Ellen. Stop it. Knock. Knock. I ignored, but she kept going. She had never been this insistent with anything before. I tried to ignore it, but it was getting on my nerves, and frankly, I felt scared. Why was Ellen doing this? Why every night at the same exact time down to the minute? Why wouldn't she let me sleep until I answered her? Knock. Knock. I got up in a sudden movement. God damn it, Ellen! I was ready for a discussion, but when I finally glanced at her, it was as if all the strength was drained from me. She wasn't smiling. She wasn't blinking. Just staring right at me, fixated like an animal, and her mouth was moving slowly, and she didn't stop. Knock. Knock. I didn't know how to react or what expression I had when I saw her, but my heart skipped a beat. It was terrifying, as if her gaze froze me in place. 1,000-yard stare. Knock. Knock. Who's there? I asked, feeling as if it was the only way out of that nightmare. Not me. So don't answer the door, she said weakly. Ellen slowly closed her eyes and laid down. I kept staring at her while she fell into what seemed to be a deep sleep. I got up and left. I walked downstairs and sat down at the couch in the living room, staring at the night sky outside and absorbing the quiet of the neighborhood. My heart was beating fast and it didn't slow down. I was too scared to sleep in the same room as my girlfriend, all because of a knock-knock joke. But it was unnatural. I thought about calling someone. I thought about it all being some kind of sleep-related issue, such as some type of sleepwalking, but it didn't make any sense. I felt so tired and decided that early in the morning I would call an old friend who's a psychologist and get the opinion of a professional. Something was wrong with Ellen. I stayed on the couch as the day rose, and once Ellen woke up, she was acting normal again. Even asked me why I wasn't in bed. I didn't answer. In fact, I didn't speak to her and simply left for work. She seemed very upset, but I wouldn't do anything about it. Once I got to work, I called my friend, told him everything that was happening in as much detail as I'm describing now. He didn't seem as worried as I figured, but we agreed in making an appointment for next week. Now I just needed to convince Ellen to come with me. I received plenty of text messages from her. She seemed very worried, sad, and even confused. She apologized a lot, and it broke my heart a little. I felt bad. I shouldn't have, but I answered her and made her promise it wouldn't happen again. I also told her about the appointment, and she seemed reluctant but agreed to go with me. So we made up. This was Ellen, after all. The girl I knew ever since I was 6 years old. The woman I loved and that had taken care of me for years. And as much as that strange behavior creeped me out, she wasn't doing anything particularly frightening or even dangerous, so for a brief while I convinced myself I should give her another chance. When I returned home from work, we stayed together. She even prepared my favorite meal. Ellen was acting as gentle and caring as I always remembered, and I slept with her in our bedroom, even though I was still a bit reluctant. Knock. I couldn't believe it. She promised me she wouldn't. Knock. I gazed at the clock. 3:27 a.m. Always. Knock. I was laying on my stomach and I couldn't see her face. In fact, I didn't even bother to look at her. I was feeling more sad than scared at that point. Sad that she had broken her word. Knock. Who's there? I answered, determined to just go back to sleep. Not me. So don't answer the door. I stayed quiet and closed my eyes. I just hoped I would be able to handle it until the appointment next week. To my surprise, I was actually able to sleep. Probably because I hadn't been able to rest since last night. The following morning, I went back to not saying anything to Ellen, only very limited responses. I was expecting her to act the same as yesterday, trying to apologize, but she didn't. Mostly, she didn't say anything, almost as if she had accepted it. She also looked tired, or at least a bit weak. I went to work, but I couldn't stop thinking about her. Didn't receive any messages either. Once I got back, we had the most silent dinner I ever had in my life, and she barely ate anything. I decided to let her have the bedroom and sleep on the couch. I wasn't sure if it would stop her, but held on to the hope that she wouldn't go downstairs only to tell me the same knock-knock joke again. I covered myself with a blanket, shaked off that uneasy feeling, and tried to sleep. I had a deep sleep, without dreams. Felt like I was lost in darkness. Then I heard breathing. Opened my eyes to see Ellen standing above me, looking at me with big, fixated eyes and dilated pupils that didn't seem to belong in such a completely neutral expression, watching me sleep. I almost screamed in terror, jumped out of the couch, and her eyes followed me as I stumbled through the dark room, creating distance between us. For a moment, I was able to glance at the clock above the table. 3:27 a.m. Ellen, what are you doing? I asked, desperate, but she didn't move. In fact, she didn't say anything. Just stared at me as if I was made of glass and she could see right through me. Then, I heard a knock on the front door. Instinctively, I looked in that direction. It was followed by another knock and another, someone almost pounding at the door. I glanced back at Ellen and she was still staring at me. Slowly, I got closer to the door and she didn't move. The pounding continued. Who's there? I screamed. It stopped, and then I heard a voice. John? John, can you hear me? Open the door, please! John, please open the door! I froze in place. The voice kept calling me, but I couldn't believe it. It was Ellen's voice, coming from the other side of the door, but it couldn't be. I beg you, John, open the door. It's serious. She's not me. I swear, she's not me. Slowly, I turned my head to look at Ellen, standing in front of the couch. She was looking at me, the same fixated eyes, and a terrible, wide grin across her face. The pounding continued. John, open the door. Please, you have to trust me. I stayed still, not knowing what to do, and I don't remember what happened after that. I just woke up in my bedroom. The digital clock indicates it's 4:21 a.m. Ellen isn't by my side. I'm completely alone. I'm trembling uncontrollably, and I don't know what's going on. I don't remember what happened after I saw her terrible grin. I don't know if I opened the door. I tried to look for my phone, see if I could call the police or at least someone that I know, but I left it downstairs. All I have is Ellen's laptop, and it's where I'm writing this right now, to get advice, because I can't go downstairs. The corridor is dark, very dark, almost as if the shadows were leaning into the room, and I can hear a faint, scratching sound coming from below. What should I do?
3 years ago, I survived something so horrible that I've only put it into words for police officers and numerous therapists. Well, now I'm telling all of you. It was my final year of university, exams were over, and I was having one last bash with my friends before we all ventured off into the real world, ready to be adults. I'd been drinking copiously, and I hardly remember anything from that night. My friends said they lost me around midnight. I wandered off for a smoke, and they didn't see me after that. Not until everything had happened. I think I got chatting to a sketchy woman in a back alley. I remember a painful blow to the head. No amount of alcohol could have made me forget that resounding, excruciating thud. I woke in a revolting, dilapidated building. It was a sprawling complex that used to be an acrylic factory, as I would later learn. In the expansive room, which covered most of the floor, there were others like me. We were strapped to operating tables that had been propped vertically for some bizarre reason. I think our tormentor wanted us to face another. "What is this place?" Phil, as I shall call him, screamed from an operating table. "Be quiet," Millie pleaded. "He'll be back soon." She looked at me with teary eyes, and I didn't utter a word. Primarily, that was due to my state of stupefied shock, but I also felt inclined to believe her. She looked haggard and filthy compared to Phil and me. I knew she'd been there a long time. Judging by the fear in her eyes, I assumed it would be better to stay quiet. What truly horrified me about her was that she'd clearly been subjected to a macabre operation. She was missing both of her legs, but the shoddy stitching and blood trails leading from her stumped legs suggested that somebody had surgically removed them. I started to hyperventilate, wrestling with the burgeoning panic attack. I didn't want to know what would happen to me if I were to cause a scene. And then I heard a series of clomping footsteps up metal stairs. The sound echoed around the decaying factory building, and Phil finally stopped moving. He also took Millie's advice and stayed very, very quiet. There was no sight of the woman I'd seen that night before, and I could only assume she must have been working for the butcher. That's what I've come to call him, and as I said, I'm not going to use real names here. "Hello, Millie!" the butcher roared as he entered the operating room. "Have you welcomed our new patients?" Millie nodded furiously, stifling the cries that were clearly trying to escape her quivering lips. The butcher walked over to her and stroked her face. There, my love," he cooed. "No crying. No more tears, please. We're fixing you up. You're gonna be shiny and new. I promise." "What is wrong with you?" Phil bellowed. The butcher hissed as if he were some inhuman monster, not a man. He took purposeful strides over to Phil's operating table, and I saw the strong, confident look on the prisoner's face drain away. "That's no way to speak to your doctor, is it?" The butcher spat in Phil's face. "I am merely a man who strives to put things right. Why do you think I studied medicine? I help people. Some problems go deeper than flesh. But I have solutions. They didn't understand that. But I don't need them. So much red tape out there in the civilized world. I'm a freelance surgeon now. Do you understand?" "No. Poor Phil. Your condition is worse than I thought. I think I'll have to operate on you right away." Phil screamed and begged for forgiveness as the butcher rummaged through his assortment of surgical tools on a nearby trolley. He opted for a pair of tweezers and a small surgical knife, then he smiled at Phil. "There's only one solution for foul mouths like you," the butcher said. He tweezed Phil's tongue and swiftly sliced it in half with a meticulous level of precision that absolutely horrified me. I was immediately aware that he could hack us to pieces in moments. He could slice through us like butter. Phil wailed and moaned, mouth filled with blood, as the butcher threw his severed tongue in a nearby bin. And then Phil did something truly foolish. He grabbed the butcher's coat with his hand, when the maniacal surgeon was standing close enough and headbutted the madman. "Oh, Phil," the butcher sighed. "That won't do at all, will it?" Millie and I exchanged a look. We knew exactly what punishment Phil would face next. We squeezed our eyes shut as the sinister surgeon removed all 4 of Phil's major limbs. It was a loud and horrifying spectacle. I'm glad I didn't witness it, but the aftermath was terrifying enough. Tongueless, armless, and legless, Phil finally behaved. He remained still. And the butcher finally moved his attention to me. "Greetings, young Michael," he said. "Have you been studying hard?" I nodded enigmatically, too afraid to utter a word. The butcher smiled at me. "Good, that's good," he said. But my colleague's chat with you last night was a little unsettling. You seem to have some issues, young Mike. You're sick of essays, she said. You never want to write one again? Is that right? I gulped and the butcher grinned maliciously. How about we remove those hands? Then you'll never have to worry about typing a thing, he said. I screamed as the butcher made quick work of slicing through my left wrist, and it was only through sheer luck, fortuitous timing, that I kept my right hand. He was interrupted by police officers. It seemed that the butcher had been sloppy when abducting me. He left a trail, and the authorities found him in the nick of time. The madman had one last gruesome spectacle up his sleeve, however. He slit his throat before all of us. No, I'm not like these broken patients, he said, lifting the knife to his throat. I'm no captive, and I never will be one. I've spoken to Millie since the events of that terrible day, and she's trying her best to move on with her life. Phil, on the other hand, well, he's been in a psychiatric hospital for the past couple years. He just couldn't adjust to his new state of existence. He attempted to take his life several times, according to his family members. I keep in touch with them because I care about the guy. I know that sounds strange, but trauma is something that can't be explained. Millie and I have both tried to reach out to Phil, explaining to him that solidarity might aid his recovery. He doesn't want to speak to us, however. In fact, he doesn't want to speak to anyone. Nothing was ever the same for him after that day. Nothing was the same for any of us after the butcher.
I was about 20 or 21 at the time this incident took place. I was a female university student, but I commuted to my campus, so I lived at home. A good friend of mine went to the same school, so we stayed close into our adulthood. She had recently started working out at a branch of a popular chain of gyms that was nearby, and she asked me to be her gym buddy. I was more than happy to, and I started joining her. Whenever we went, we had our little routine: weights, cardio, and then to the pool. This gym had a great pool for laps, but of course you had to shower before you got in, especially after working up a sweat doing other exercises. The locker room connected the main section of the complex to the pool area, and it had little cubicles to shower off in. We used these showers all the time without a second thought. The building had been around for a long time. Before it was this particular gym, it was another gym from a different company, and so on. The place wasn't exactly modern or renovated, and in some areas, the showers in particular, it was pretty dilapidated. Some of the tiles were cracked or had fallen off completely. One day, the stall I was in was missing tiles all around the handles, but I didn't pay attention to it. I figured it was only pipework back there. But that day, I got an odd feeling. So, I bent down to look through the hole in the shower wall. Lo and behold, there was a pair of eyes staring straight at me. I could tell it was a man, maybe middle-aged. Even staring directly at him, having caught him peeping, he stared right on. He never looked away. His gaze animalistic and intent. The hole went straight through to another room, presumably the showers in the men's locker room. I turned the shower head so that I could hide in the corner and finish up out of his line of sight, and I promptly reported it to the staff. They went looking for him in the men's locker room, but never found the culprit. I jogged my memory, trying to recall if any particular person had been watching me in the gym that day, but it could have been any one of dozen or so men I casually walked out next to. In the same room, none the wiser. Within only a couple of days, the staff had patched up all the shower walls. I'm glad it won't happen to any other unsuspecting girls there, but shower peeper? Let's not meet.